Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is at its best when it is up close and personal. This new Marvel Cinematic Universe adventure features a lot of engaging interpersonal drama between its characters, relatable themes about youthful potential, positive representation of Asian American culture and Chinese mythology, and frenetic hand-to-hand action sequences, all of which are commendable qualities for a smaller scale character-based movie, especially considering that most Marvel movies are generally driven by larger scale global or galactic conflicts and fight sequences determining the fate of the world and the universe in general. In fact, being large in scale is such a pervasive trope in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that a smaller scale character-based movie like Shang-Chi feels quaint in its restraint. And while the movie does admittedly decommit from its character-motivated drama in the third act, which we will discuss because it is inevitably a problem, the first two acts of Shang-Chi are solely driven by the characters and the performances, and from that angle it is quite good and worthy of recommending. This focus on characters starts with its story. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings follows the title character Shang-Chi and his BFF Katie. The two live the millennial young adult lifestyle in San Francisco as they work as valet drivers during the day and party, get inebriated, and sing Aerosmith on a karaoke machine at night. Been there. But unbeknownst to Katie, Shang-Chi has been living a double life. As a child, Shang-Chi was trained to be an expert at unarmed combat by his father Zhu Wenwu, an immortal man with incredible combat prowess who also wields magical rings that are bound to him. Zhu uses his power to lead an army called the Ten Rings, named after his magic rings because he's very creative when it comes to nomenclature, and he uses his superpowers and his army to topple governments and accrue power, a tumultuous legacy that our lead protagonist wants no part of. As a teenager, Shang-Chi eventually ran away from his father and the Ten Rings, forged a new life in America, and kept his past a secret, even from his friend Katie. This eventually changes though. When Zhu sends some of his henchmen after Shang-Chi to steal a pendant, Shang defends himself publicly with his vast array of skills, and from there he and Katie meet up with Shang's sisters Yaoling, and together they all piece together what Zhu is really after. The story is good, mostly because Shang-Chi's interpersonal drama between his family and friends is terrific. See, much of the movie progresses via smaller scale personal motivations between Shang-Chi, his family, and his friends, and no matter who the character is though, the development between the lead and the side characters is heartfelt and engrossing. To understand why this is, let's start by detailing Shang's friendship with Katie. As characters, Shang-Chi and Katie have a terrific dynamic that is imbued with a lot of chemistry. They both have natural reactions to one another and are often funny. Katie in particular is humorous because she is a regular girl whose life was upended when learning about Shang-Chi's origins, and compared to the other characters, she is ill-equipped to handle the occupational hazards related to being a sidekick, yet she tries her best anyway, which is both amusing and heartwarming, and she really plays off Shang's more urgent demeanor quite well, and it is quite wholesome. Shang's relationship with his younger sister Yaoling is quite good as well. When Shang-Chi ran away from home as a teenager, he abandoned Yaoling to live alone with their father, and ever since then, she has been resentful of Shang. And when the duo inevitably meet up again, there is some good drama and character interaction surrounding the idea of reconciliation. After all, Shang-Chi feels guilty, and the movie conveys the character's emotions quite effectively. Through both performances and how the action is framed, we the audience can truly sympathize with the rift between these two characters. It is quite good. The most important of these character relationships, though, is between Shang-Chi and his father Zhu. With just the manner in which Shang talks about him or looks at him, there is a lot of unspoken tension between Shang and his father. From Shang's perspective, he rightfully believes that Zhu was way too hard on him as a kid. After all, who trains a child to become a super capable assassin? What a weirdo. But from Zhu's perspective, he believes that Shang is wasting his potential, that he is throwing all of his skills and his heritage down the drain for nothing, which, ouch. This character and narrative angle is a core theme of Shang-Chi. The movie stresses how parents place unfair expectations on their children, and how those kids must overcome the aforementioned expectation in a way that is true to themselves, a theme that is very understandable to both a millennial and Gen Z perspective. After all, the younger generations are struggling and are more likely to be less successful than their parents and grandparents were at the same age, and from this viewpoint, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings strikes gold. It truly resonates because many of us understand those expectations that parents place upon us, and through these characters and the themes, it is really easy to become invested in the film's narrative and its close quarters action. Speaking of action, the film's fight scenes are awesome. The hand-to-hand fight choreography is stunning and clearly inspired by martial arts films. The camera moves with the characters, and all of the fighting is clearly visible on screen, and from there the film essentially displays cinematic confidence in its craft. The film and its director Destin Daniel Cretton clearly knew that they had some of the MCU's best action scenes to date, and it really shows. The action is exhilarating, and it clearly wears its Asian American, and Chinese filmmaking influences on its sleeve, and in comparison to the rest of the MCU, it is quite unique. These influences extend to the movie's visual art style as well. Throughout the movie, we see Chinese-inspired mythological creatures and settings, and from there I really got the sense that the film displayed cultural authenticity and a sense of pride in one's heritage. And while sure there might be some problems I don't see, I am a white lady from America after all, my viewpoints don't hold that much water, I really believe that the Asian Americans working on this film, whether it be the director, cast, or anyone else, did justice to their unique and interesting cultural backgrounds. You can tell that the film is proud of its representation of an underrepresented community, and that feeling is wonderful. This is especially cool given the tumultuous history of Shang-Chi as a Marvel comic book character. See, the comic was neck deep in bad Asian stereotypes. Hell, Shang-Chi's father and the main villain was named Fu Manchu, which, yikes. And with this new adaptation, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings reads like a form of cultural reclamation. It is a story created by Asian Americans and meant for a diverse audience, which is a far cry from the original comic, and that's a good thing, because racist undertones are bad, obviously. Admittedly, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings has some problems. Most notably, it feels like a Marvel Studios production through and through. It features many callbacks to the broader MCU, there are some tonal contradictions, especially with a certain narrative reveal that falls flat. It has an action comedy style that the MCU has more or less bludgeoned to death over the years, and the movie ends with a big epic final battle that determines the fate of the world, which is far from an original narrative angle in the superhero genre. In fact, the third act and the final battle are the movie's weakest link, mostly because Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings' best quality is in how personal the drama and the action otherwise is. Most of the movie is driven by smaller, familiar character motivations and features smaller scale conflicts rather than being a big epic about saving the world, a broad trope that is overly familiar in the MCU. And these smaller scale conflicts were the film's strength, but the big final battle backtracks on these better qualities. It dilutes the otherwise stellar drama and makes the film's action feel less personal, which is just unfortunate. Still, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is a good Marvel Cinematic Universe adventure. While the third act falls flat and broadens some of the drama way too much, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings features some great character work, good performances, awesome action sequences, and good representation for a community that is underrepresented in Hollywood. And through it all, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings is a good movie. While it doesn't reinvent the superhero wheel, it does prove that Shang-Chi is worthy of being an Avenger, and in many ways, that is good enough. See ya. And with that, that was the video. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like rating and subscribe to my channel. Ring the bell so that you're notified for whenever I release a new video. Also, let me know in the comments what you think about Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings and comic book movies in general. Additionally, please consider checking out my Patreon page. The link is in the description. And speaking of Patreon, I just want to thank my patrons, especially my high tier ones, and David, Samantha, Devlin, Mom, and Morgan. Thank you so much for supporting what I do. Love y'all.